Hi everyone. Let's read this article on what went wrong in Afghanistan. Watching the rapid deterioration of the security situation in Afghanistan, the Taliban have captured a third of the country's provincial capitals in the weeks since the US military pulled its troops out, and it has evoked a feeling of deja vu. In 2005, an Iraqi infantry battalion conducting counterinsurgency operations in and around Baghdad, one of the most violent parts of Iraq. In that conflict, it was difficult to have any hope at the time. The time in Mosul, where the unit advised and supported 2 Iraqi army divisions, 1 Iraqi Federal Police division, and thousands of local police officers, sensed more progress. Leaving Iraq in 2010, it felt it had been a good job. It's done a great job, turning a corner and building a capable and competent security force. A year later, in Mazar-e-Sharif, Afghanistan, recruiting and training Afghan police units and commandos rotated home thinking we had done some good. It would have been proven wrong on both counts. In 2014, by then stationed Pentagon, everyone watched in dismay as the Iraqi divisions everyone had helped train collapsed in a matter of days when faced with the Islamic State. Today, as the Taliban seizes terrain across Afghanistan, including in what was everyone's area of operations, no one can help but stop and reflect on their role. What did go wrong? Plenty of things. From the very beginning, nearly 2 decades ago, the America's military effort to advise and mentor Iraqi and Afghan forces was treated like a pickup game, informal, ad hoc, and absent of strategy. Everyone patched together small teams of soldiers, marine sailors, and airmen, taught them some basic survival skills, and gave them an hour-long session in the local language before placing them with foreign units. Everyone described them variously as MITTs, BITTs, SPTTs, AFPAKHANs, OMLT, PRTs, VSO, AAB, SFAB, IAG, MNSTC, SFAT. Every new term a chapter in a book without a plot. In most cases, these men and women courageously made it up as they went along. Everyone borrowed untrained personnel from mostly administrative assignments and largely had them focus on tactical tasks, reporting progress in colorful bubble charts. Social media and public affair documents were replete with images of rifle ranges, obstacle courses, room clearing, and lots of meetings, many of which were themselves about meetings over tea. But from everyone's tours in Iraq, in Afghanistan, larger systemic problems were never truly addressed. It did not successfully build the Iraqi and Afghan forces as institutions. It failed to establish the necessary infrastructure that dealt effectively with military education, training, pay systems, career progression, personnel accountability, all the things that make a professional security force. Rotating teams through tours of 6 months a year, it could not resolve the vexing problems facing Iraq's and Afghanistan's armies and police: endemic corruption, plummeting morale, rampant drug abuse, abysmal maintenance, and inept logistics. It got really good at preparing platoons and companies to conduct raids and operate checkpoints, but little worked behind them. It is telling that today the best forces in Afghanistan are the Special Forces Commandos, small teams that perform courageously and magnificently, but despite a supporting institution, not because of one. If those were the things it was done poorly or insufficiently, there were other things that should not have been done at all, namely train the police. It was generally accepted that the ultimate goal of combating insurgents or terrorists was to turn the fight over to domestic law enforcement. In other words, get to the point where the police could handle threats without fielding the army. But the United States does not have a national police force, so police training became a task that largely fell to the army. In Iraq, it was in thousands of police, and in Afghanistan, a task force that vetted, selected, fielded nearly 3,000 local police supported the Afghan National Police with warrant-based targeting of insurgents. It should be made clear that zero law enforcement experience was present for many of them, and also the US military, aside from some National Guard or reserve troops. It was attempted to bridge the gap by hiring a handful of brave retired police officers and have them serve as technical advisors and trainers alongside the US Army troops, but even they could only focus on tactical tasks. They lacked the professional and personal experience to build national institutions and systems. There never was a chance to make policing work. The US military could not overcome the national and institutional lack of experience. Looking back, the US also failed to properly institutionalize advising large-scale conventional forces until far too late. No one was encouraged to take on these duties either. To keep moving up, officers had to rotate through normal command assignments as well. The Army tried to change the wording of promotion and selection boards, but the bureaucracy resisted. When finally formally Security Force Assistance Brigades in 2018 was created, it was telling that none of the new outfit's first key leaders had ever cut their teeth on these advisor teams. Over the past 20 years, there have been many failings. The boxes were checked when it came to saying that the training had been done to the partners, spun a rosy narrative of progress, and perhaps prioritized the safety and well-being of the US troops over the missions of buttressing partner capacity. The US didn't send the right people, prepare them well, or reward them afterward. They rotated strangers on tours of up to a year and expected them to build relationships and then replace them. They were overly optimistic and largely made things up as they went along. They didn't like oversight or tough questions from Washington, and no one really bothered to hold them accountable anyway. They had no capacity or experience, and with some of their tasks, they stumbled. Yet these failings, egregious as they were, made it easy to focus on the armed forces as a scapegoat. In fact, the military, the US allies, and the Iraqi and Afghan partners were responding to a lack of coherent policy and strategy. The USA invaded Afghanistan with righteous anger after 9/11, but then what? Why was the United States in Afghanistan for years afterward? What about the fraught relationship with Pakistan and its influence in Afghanistan? A coherent strategy to address these questions would have made the job much easier on the ground for the US. First and foremost, a clearly articulated end goal would have assured the Afghan partners and their allies from other nations of their determination. Instead of leaving the entire effort to the Department of Defense, a coordinated strategy with commensurate resources across government could have produced better results in multiple Afghan institutions. Further, 20 years ago, a commitment to law enforcement might have been very attractive to the US allies, many of whom have their own national police force and a track record of success in performing such missions. Perhaps most crucial, a clear and forceful foreign policy regarding Pakistan, coupled with the commitment to supporting and employing a new Afghan army, would have provided much clarity and focus on their military. The US didn't fight a 20-year war in Afghanistan, they fought 20 incoherent wars, 1 year at a time, without a sense of direction. The US military can and should be blamed for the collapse of security forces in Afghanistan. The current collapse keeps them up at night. In the military, the main effort to get the best resources and the best talent available for more than 20 years, no matter what was reported, what the US read in the headlines, efforts to build and train large-scale conventional security forces in Afghanistan and Iraq have mostly been in an aimless, ham-fisted acronym soup of trial and error that never became the true main effort. And the US is to blame for that. But US is not the only ones responsible. Someday, they will ask young men and women to do this again, to fight a war overseas, to partner with local forces, to train them and build them up. Before they do, they owe it to the young people to ask the tough questions of how and why the US failed.